Well, hello, guys. You're listening to Beauty Bites with Dr. K, Secrets of a Plastic Surgeon. And today on the podcast, I'm very delighted to introduce you to Doug Evans. And Doug is the author of the Sprout book. And today we are going to learn, me and you are going to learn all about sprouts and why we need to incorporate them into our lives and our diets. So welcome, Doug.
Well, oh, thank you so much for having me, Dr. K. It's a real privilege, and I'm excited about your interest in sprouts.
Yes. So, for those of you who haven't heard of Doug, he's the author of the Sprout book and the co founder of Organic Avenue. He's the founder of Juicero and the founder of Wonder Valley Hot Springs, which is a 20-acre permaculture hot springs oasis here in Los Angeles. It's got natural soaking pools. And he is kind of pioneering public interest in sprouting. And the sprouts have this potential to bring us this wonderment of nourishment and antioxidants and all kinds of health benefits. And I definitely want to learn more about it. So tell me what got you started in sprouts.
Perfect. I just want to clarify one little thing, Dr. K. I would say we are 2.5 hours from LA. So
Okay, not in LA.
not in LA. We're near LA. I love LA, but we are near the town of Joshua Tree is our
Very
little oasis.
well. I'm going to come visit for sure. But you've been an early pioneer in the natural food industry. What is it that's caused you to go on this plant-based way of eating and
Yeah.
using sprouts?
Well, it's interesting. I grew up eating fast food, street food, processed food, and my parents were, I would say, lower middle class. So there was scarcity of food
Mm-hmm.
in our home. And when we um, grew up and I left the house and I started to make money, I started to reward myself with food. And so food was definitely a reward system for me. And I liked eating, I liked the way it felt, but I ate really bad food. And I was about 35 pounds overweight. And I just thought like it was normal to feel like you were in a coma at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I felt it being gassy and bloated and having, various degrees of pain were just part of life.
Yeah.
And then when I was in my mid 30s, my aunt got diabetes and they ended up chopping off both of her feet below her
Oh.
ankles.
Uh-huh.
And that was scary for me. And then my uncle died of heart disease. And that was also scary for me. But
Very.
very. And then when my mother got stomach cancer and died, that was really like my mother was the sweetest woman. She did everything for me and my brother. And when she died, I was really heartbroken. And then when my father died of heart disease in the same hospital that my mother died of, things started to like connect, like what was wrong. And
Yeah.
my brother, without going too much into his health history, he has um he's uh obese, he's diabetic, type 2 diabetic, he's got atrial fibrillation, hypertension, and
Mm-hmm.
he's had 3 strokes and a heart attack.
My goodness.
So I thought that I was genetically cursed and that I was just going to also suffer from one of these ailments or, serious health conditions. And then they say when the student is ready, the teacher will come. I met my teacher, who was a long-term vegetarian vegan, and I had never even heard the term vegan.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was short for vegetarian. And it was astounding to me and incomprehensible that an adult Homo sapien living in New York City could possibly survive on eating fruits, vegetables, seeds, and nuts. Like, I almost made a joke. Like, what are you, a rabbit? Like, how can you eat that way? And but she was very convincing and persuasive, and I was open minded. And some of the things that she said resonated. And
Who
then
was she? Who was
her,
she?
her name her name was Denise Maury,
Uh-huh.
and she was the founder of Organic Avenue, my co-founder in that. And she was working. It's interesting, if we digress. She was working as a speech pathologist at United Cerebral Palsy, but was much more passionate about diet, health, and nutrition. So I was more on the entrepreneurial side. And I said, well, why don't we do something together? And we started Organic Avenue out of my loft in Chinatown on the Lower East Side, which I would refer to as the armpit of New York City. So it was just
Just the two
dirty,
of you.
off the grid, just the two of us. But there was a community there. There were probably the most vegan restaurants in 1999 were on the Lower East Side in the East Village. So there was
Plus,
already
there was already the ecosystem in place, it sounds like. So I want to
correct.
ask you, I mean, I've had sprouts in my sandwiches. I remember having like those little popularized, the little green sprouts that people put in sandwiches, alfalfa. I think that was real
Yes.
popular in the 80s and 90s. And I don't see it as much in sandwiches today. When you talk about sprouts, when you talk about sprouting, you're talking about a whole different thing than just sprinkling a little bit of alfalfa in your sandwiches on a daily basis. What exactly is the sprouting?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that alfalfa sprouts are a bona fide and legitimate sprout. So they're for very real.
They're
And
great.
they're great. And when I grew up, and I began my health journey 21 plus years ago,
Uh-huh.
I knew about alfalfa sprouts and mung bean sprouts and occasionally sunflower sprouts. And and I always thought of them as a garnish. I never thought of them as
Sorry, 1 second. I can't hear anything for 1 minute. Technical difficulties. Maybe we shouldn't do that while we're recording. Shouldn't do that while we're recording. Mute. He's on mute. Should we just leave it plugged in? Can you hear me, Doug?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, okay. One quick thing. Can you just do a little wave for a little Instagram story, and maybe we'll just okay.
There we go.
Yeah. I'm podcasting today with Doug Evans. Say hey, Doug.
Hi, how are you, Dr. K?
Learning all about sprouts. What's your favorite sprout?
My favorite sprout today are French lentils.
Wait, say that one more time. She's going to grab that.
Oh, my favorite sprouts today are French lentils.
Hold on. I'm going to ask the question. And then this is for an Instagram story. Okay, here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1. So, Doug, what is your favorite sprout and why?
I love French lentils is my sprout of the day. And I think they're easy. They grow really fast. They're edible in 3 days. And then when you sprout lentils, you double the antioxidant levels, you triple the vitamin C,
Really?
and they're just delicious as is without
Really?
seasoning.
Oh my God, you're going to have to teach me or send me some to grow. Okay, so sorry. Um, can you hear me again?
Loud and clear.
Okay, hang on. I got to make sure it's going into the headphones. Technology is not my favorite thing.
Oh, you're great with technology. It's amazing, how you're doing on social media and everything, Dr.
Oh,
K.
thank you. Thank you. Okay, so back to where we were. Let's start that whole question over and I'll edit that beginning part there. But
Sure.
so I used to put alfalfa sprouts in all my sandwiches, and that was really popular in the 80s and 90s, and I don't see it as much anymore. But when you're talking about sprouting, what exactly is sprouting in the sense that you're using sprouts in your life?
So sprouting is part of the process, uh, probably synonymous with the word germination.
Mm-hmm.
When you take a seed and you sprout it or you germinate it, you're taking this little dormant seed that's a complete living organism that's in a dormant state that can literally last for centuries. But
Yeah.
when you create the right environment, which is water and darkness, you can activate that seed and signal into the DNA of that seed that it's time to wake up and grow. And that is the sprouting process. And seeds um, are required to sprout in order to grow mature fruits and vegetables. So there would be no plant life on this planet, therefore no life on this planet, if there were no sprouts. And
Exactly.
right, but for the last thousands of years, sprouts were um, part of certain cultures and used as a survival food or as a medicinal food. But as the Industrial Revolution occurred and we had ubiquity of fast food, processed food, supermarkets, and restaurants, it was easier to take a 5 pound head of broccoli than to, you know, take a little seed. And
Hmm.
there was no shortage of land and water. So these seeds would sprout and grow into mature vegetables.
Right.
For me, my little insight came when I moved to the desert 3 years ago because there were no health food stores near here. And I had the stark realization that I was not only in the desert, I was in a food desert.
Yeah. And by the time you grow a mature head of broccoli, you would just wither away and never have a green thing again. Like it's months just from sprout to full plant.
Exactly. And that's where I literally, as I was meditating under the stars in the hot springs, and I was like, I'm not going to quit. Like, I came here for a reason. I wanted to be in nature, I wanted to see the Milky Way. And I said, oh, I can sprout. And
Yeah.
within 30 days, Dr. K, it was really extraordinary. Within 30 days, 50% of my calories were being eaten by sprouts that I was growing on my own, like little countertop in 1 cubic foot. I was
Wow.
growing 50% of my calories for like $1 a day. It was
Wow.
unbelievable. And so I was sprouting alfalfa sprouts, broccoli sprouts, cabbage sprouts, radish sprouts, clover, sunflower,
And this stuff
azuki.
tastes good, actually. I mean, it's okay, right? It tastes pretty good.
Well, it's really interesting because um, if you were to add tahini on
Hmm.
any sprout, you don't
It'll,
taste the sprout. It masks the entire flavor of the sprout. And if you were to add curry,
hmm.
and make like a little light curry sauce and sprinkle it over the sprouts, you don't taste the sprouts. If you were to take like a lemon, lime, and chili pepper,
Hmm.
you taste
The
the
flavorings.
acidulant and
Hmm.
the flavorings. So one of the things that I was thinking, like, what could be my gift to the world?
Yeah.
And like, I was very passionate because I turned my life around personally, health wise. I lost the 36 pounds. I'm now 54 years old. And like, I'm eating in such a way I'm eating for longevity, I'm eating for flexibility, I'm eating for mental clarity. And this all came from eating copious amounts of sprouts, which have the micronutrients, the phytonutrients, the polyphenols, the bioflavonoids, the prebiotics, the probiotics, the antioxidants, that when researchers started to kind of dig in to the nutritional benefit of sprouts, they found that broccoli sprouts contain the most. So it's known that vegetables are good for you, right? I think we
True.
can agree with that. And cruciferous vegetables in particular are known to be good for um, killing cancer cells. Maybe
And
not curing cancer, but killing cancer cells.
so for the audience, cruciferous vegetables, meaning cauliflower, broccoli, they are, what's the class of cruciferous defined as?
You know, I don't know.
I don't
Like,
either, but I know that cauliflower and broccoli are in there. And what else?
yeah,
Radishes.
um, uh, arugula, bok
Uh,
choy,
hmm.
wasabi.
Hmm.
There's a bunch that's in there, but they basically, like, when they're in a small stage, they have a cross. So
Oh,
there's
that's why they're called
the
cruciferous.
cruciferous. But it turns out that of all vegetables, broccoli has the most of this precursor to sulforaphane of all vegetables. And then it turns out that broccoli sprouts have 50 to 100 times that compound, precursor to the compound sulforaphane, than mature broccoli. And
Amazing.
so
And that
I
is
just, if you look,
anti-cancer, right? That's the one that's the anti-cancer fighting ability, and it's particularly good, the sulforaphanes.
yeah, it turns out that the defense mechanism of the plant, right, has this compound called glucoraphanin. And then if for example an insect bites the plant, it bites through and it mixes this enzyme called myrosinase with the compound glucoraphanin, and then it forms like almost like two things creating a fusion. It creates sulforaphane, which is very fast acting,
Mm-hmm.
and it creates a bitterness, but that would defend the plant.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that defense will also kill cancer cells.
Hmm.
So that's really powerful. And there was a recent paper by Dr. Jed Fahey out of Johns Hopkins University where they looked at the chemoprotective properties of sulforaphane in also treating, not curing, but treating autism. So it
Hmm.
turns out that sulforaphane from broccoli sprouts will create the heat shock proteins in people suffering from autism. And, this is beyond my depth of specific science, but turns out that the number one treatment, not cure, and not just natural or allopathic, but the treatment for autism is sulforaphane and is broccoli sprouts. And in 2019 alone, there were over 1,500 peer-reviewed research papers published globally on specifically broccoli sprouts or broccoli sprout um, extract of sulforaphane in treating various disease on big, all sorts of studies. So that's like one little thing. And it turns out that when the broccoli seed sprouts, it has this great concentration of these compounds. And as it grows into the mature plant, it gets diluted.
Mm-hmm.
So the broccoli sprouts are concentrated
Mm-hmm.
of the nutrients and the healing properties of the plants. And it also turns out that all seeds are sproutable.
Interesting. And also, sulforaphanes are supposed to help women too with hormonal issues, I understand. Like it helps to control sometimes menopausal symptoms as well as hormonal acne and, hormonal flares as we age. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting that the sulforaphane will actually open up the NRF2 pathways.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just overall, for something that if you think about what you should eat, right? And we're digressing for a second, but my food philosophy now is that everything you put in your mouth
Mm-hmm.
is a life or death decision. Like
Oh
it's
my
not a
God.
joke.
That's
It,
pressure. You're kind of, it's true. It's a decision towards healthier or less healthy.
Yeah, it's a choice. And we are privileged to be able to have the resources to make that choice. Now, one of the things that's really powerful for me, which is driving this global sprout movement. If you were to see sprouts right now, they are trending. My
Yeah.
book, my little book, the sprout book, I didn't God,
Oh.
it's hidden in the background. But in my book, the Sprout book, is in its sixth printing right now.
Wow.
Came out in April, and the seed suppliers who are selling the sprouts and selling seeds for sprouting, their sales are doubling and tripling, and more people are asking for sprouts, sprouting. They're being sold out in the supermarket and the health food store because
Yeah.
people are becoming aware
Of the
that
health benefit.
the health benefits and the fact that, if you were to ask me where to start with sprouts, I would say in my book, we created 40 recipes, and
Hmm.
every one of those recipes is 100% plant based. and 50% of the ingredients are sprouts. And the other thing is, when I grew up, everything was expensive, and things are still expensive. And sprouts are the only inexpensive food I can actually think of where you can still buy a pound of raw lentils and then sprout them and get 3 pounds, right? So
Yeah.
you can get 3 pounds of food, sprouted organic food, for 70 cents a pound. I mean, it's
Yeah. You can buy a
unbelievable.
bag of lentils for $2. Yeah, pretty much,
Yeah.
right? So
So
wait, are you recommending that where should we buy these seeds if we want to sprout them at home? And should we sprout seeds at home or just go to the grocery store and buy pre-sprouted stuff at like expensive Whole Foods or something?
yeah, I mean, I think that I did a very extensive podcast with Marianne Williamson, the former presidential candidate and the author of Return to Love. And our focus was on food poverty and food equality. And one
Mm,
of the advantages, if you were to go to Air One and buy sprouts, and I am very happy to admit I've done that a lot and pay $5 for the sprouts because I think you're getting the most nutritious $5 worth of food that you can get. But if you were to sprout on your own, it would cost you 30 cents or 50 cents to buy those seeds. So I am encouraging people to buy a mason jar, get some cheesecloth, and buy sprouting seeds. I recommend now that more than ever, because of what's happening in industrial agriculture and pesticides and genetic modification, to
yeah.
buy organic seeds, to buy seeds that are specifically grown for the purpose of sprouting, so they will have a higher germination rate, and also seeds that have been tested for pathogens so that you can feel safer that you are starting off with a good base. And then it's,
What's a good seed supplier? Like, give us some names of something we can jot down where to go buy our
yeah,
first batch of sprout seeds or a beginner kit.
yeah. So, True Leaf Market, as you'd pronounce it, True Leaf Market, they sell these wonderful kits with a few jars, some sample seeds. You
Hmm.
can get great organic seeds at sproutman
Hmm.
dot com. They're both on Instagram. They have that. Johnny's Select Seeds are a great source of seeds. And these are companies that have been around for decades selling seeds um, to people. So you can do that. But I also don't want to stand on ceremony. Like if someone's living in, inner city, they don't have Amazon, they don't have things. Like you said, you can buy a bag of lentils for $2 and probably 50% of those lentils will sprout.
Yeah,
So
just at your local Ralph's or Vaughn's, just a regular bag of lentils in the bean aisle. And
yeah,
then
just
what's the process? I'm going to sprinkle those in the bottom of a mason jar with some paper towel and water.
no, I would say you get a mason jar, you probably add 1 cup of the lentils, you add 2 cups of water because they
Mm,
will absorb the water, let
right.
them soak overnight. The
Okay.
next morning, either with you can get a special lid for the mason jars, or you could just take cheesecloth and a rubber band and strain out, or you could use a colander in your
Mm-hmm.
kitchen, like no special tools required. And then you strain the water, and then you leave the jar inverted at a 45-degree angle so that the excess water will drain out, and then you rinse them twice a day, always letting the water drain out. And by the third day, you can start eating the lentils.
Oh, wow. Okay. And if you eat lentils plain, they just taste like salad, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting when you sprout a lentil, you're activating the life force in it. You're getting this hard, crunchy thing, which is like a pebble, and now it becomes chewy and it
Mm-hmm.
has soluble and insoluble fiber, which is great. Like if
For
you
your
think about
body. It's amazing for your colon and
for your
everything.
colon, your microbiome, and it's enzymatically alive. So if you
Mm-hmm.
just think about, the digestive process, like if you eat a piece of meat, chicken, or fish,
Yeah.
right? Imagine what would happen to meat, chicken, or fish if you left it at 98.6 degrees for 24 or 48 hours. What would happen? It would
Yeah.
putrefy. It would decay. The
Right.
maggots would start coming out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how long it takes to go through our digestive tract from the stomach into the small intestine, into the large intestine, the colon, and gets pushed out. If you eat sprouts, they're in and out of your body in 12 hours, and they contain their own enzymes, living
Mm-hmm.
enzymes, to help with the digestive process to go through. And meat, chicken, fish have no fiber,
Yeah.
right? All sprouts have fiber. So you get a beautiful, pleasurable movement,
Mm-hmm.
and you get to extract all the nutrients from them.
So 12-hour transit time. So you're going to be very regular. You're going to be in the
Very
bathroom
regular.
very regular, which is great. Like that's how we excrete unnecessary hormones and, all of the toxins that we eat get excreted that way and processed faster. They don't sit around and absorb into the small intestine and the large intestine. So I think that rapid transit time is good, like a brushing out of the colon.
Yeah, and so overall, and so what I do is I really right now in my sprouting kitchen, I'm sprouting caraway because I
Mm,
like the flavor of the
nice.
caraway seeds. I'm sprouting lentils and I'm sprouting broccoli seeds. And I have the broccoli in different stages because I always want to be able to have 4 ounces or 8 ounces of broccoli sprouts that I can eat.
Wow. So are there certain things that you recommend to not sprout that don't taste right or might give weird byproducts, or is it anything that comes as a seed edible?
I think that the one seed where the research says not to eat raw is kidney beans.
Oh,
So
why is that?
I think they have a high concentration of the lectins,
Uh,
and that they're hard. But if you sprout them and then you cook them, you get the benefit of it. But most everything else is very sproutable, very delicious. I covered about 30 different sprouts in my book when I wrote the sprout book. So you got to understand, I never wrote a book before. I wasn't a writer or research scientist. I was someone who was into making health available through
yeah.
various means. When I moved to the desert, and I started to sprout, and I read all the pre-existing literature on sprouts, I felt that there were huge gaps in it. So I said, I'm going to take on this challenge, and I'll go to New York, I'll get a publisher, and if I can't get a publisher, I'll self-publish. I don't care. But this book is coming through me.
I love
And
that. That's such a good, amazing passion that you've brought it to fruition, that you thought
oh
of this
yeah,
idea, sprouted it, and grew it, and now it's thriving.
well, I met with one editor at one publishing company, Elizabeth Beyer at St. Martin's Press, and
Uh,
I brought sprout dishes to her. I brought raw sprouts, and she was eating the sprouts out of the palm of my hand. I
oh
mean, it was
my
a
gosh.
mind-blowing event, and she said, "We're going to do it. We're going to write this book." And so then I had the challenge of writing 60,000 words, 288 pages, in a book. And so I set up a lab and I started to document my primary research of what it take to sprout using a jar, using a tray, using a
Mm-hmm.
bag, using soil, using a paper towel. And I experimented and I made charts and graphs and research. And then I interviewed for the book medical professionals who were expert in nutrition, but they weren't drinking from the same Kool-Aid as I was. So
Mm-hmm.
they weren't all plant-based. Like Dr. Josh Axe wrote the keto book, and
Right.
Dr. Mercola talks about free-range meat, and Dr. Mark Hyman, is a leading expert in functional medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dr. Joel Kahn, plant-based, Dr. Dean Ornish, plant-based, Dr. Oz, general health expert. And the common theme across all of these various medical experts is they all loved sprouts.
That's great. That is wonderful. That inspires me to be more plant-based. Are you eating any type of proteins or meats? I mean, protein you're getting probably from legumes, I'm assuming, but do you eat any meat?
I have had no, I've eaten exclusively plants for 21 plus years.
Oh my God.
And,
So no
and
decaying, putrefying.
no, I mean, look, I feel so light and so flexible and
Yeah.
so nourished that, and look, I'm very attuned to my body, that if I
Hmm.
felt the slightest bit of, of deficiency or depletedness or reason, I would explore it. But right now, I'm feeling so good. I have so much energy, so much mental clarity that things that I used to not be on the ball on, like
Hmm.
now, like I'm not dropping balls. Like I got a lot of balls in the air and I'm catching all the balls and I'm firing on all cylinders. It
Can
feels good.
someone, one quick thing, can someone become anemic from eating completely plant-based and, sprouting type of a diet? Because women who menstruate and lose a lot of iron every month, that is kind of a concern for me. I think it's so easy for a young woman to become anemic if they have heavy periods and stuff.
I think there's a lot of iron, and maybe we can post it in the show notes. And
Sure.
a lot of plants have a lot of iron, and there's a lot of complete healthy. And I don't know your philosophy on the blue zones, but there's a lot of cultures. The healthiest um, county in city in all of the United States is about an hour and 45 minutes away from you in Loma Linda because
Yeah.
the Seventh Day Adventists are there and they're plant based,
Yeah.
and no indications of deficiency in iron whatsoever. I think that if you're eating enough calories and you have enough variety in what you're consuming, you
You'll
will
be
be
fine.
complete. And part of the thing, if I take it further on the sprouting, that originally I was looking at sprouts as sustenance, right? As food. But
Survival.
now, survival. But now I look at sprouts as medicine, as I'm learning about sulforaphane and glucoraphanin and the concentrated enzymes. And then on another vector, I look at sprouts as vitamins. That the
Hmm.
fact that you can get omega 3 and omega 6s from your medium chain fatty acids from sprouted chia and sprouted flax, and the
Mm.
benefit of consuming the sprouted chia and the sprouted flax is, in addition to getting the medium chain fatty acids, you're also getting chlorophyll and you're getting soluble and insoluble fiber. And you are assured there are no PCBs, there's no DDT, there's no mercury, there's no toxic waste, and there's no
Yeah.
cholesterol. So it's the cleanest form of getting your
Your
medium chain
fuel.
fatty acids, your fuel,
Hmm.
your omegas.
Hmm.
So I think what happens is that there's almost no money in sprouting, right? Like there's
Like
no
big
national,
agriculture. Yeah, there's no big
yeah,
agriculture. There's no
no big
cattle.
agriculture. Yeah, and there's no farm bill supporting sprouting. There are no national sprout companies, right? You've
Right.
got Del Monte and Dole and Earthbound Farms and Organic Girl selling mature baby greens, but no one's selling sprouts on a national level because they have a short shelf life, and you know
Hmm.
they're it's not worth it for them to do it. And that's where, when I think about, in particular in times like COVID, when people are concerned about the food safety and supply chain, like nothing is easier than growing your own vegetables. And I have hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, that are now using sprouts as opposed to going to the supermarket and buying green leafy vegetables that could be coming from 1,200 or 2,000 miles away and could
Yeah.
be 2 weeks old and could be like devoid of nourishment. They could just be wilted and lame when in
Hmm.
fact they can control their own supply chain. And the miraculous thing about sprouts is that you can grow them without soil, without sunshine,
It's so
on it
crazy. It's
in a
crazy
small.
easy. It's
It's
like
crazy easy.
God's little miracle, which is like propagating life. And like you said, it's just such high density nutritional benefit. Um, I think it's amazing. I think many of us started a COVID garden at the beginning of COVID. I know I planted some seeds as well. But
Yeah.
what do you say in terms of the keto group of people who think that humans were bred as carnivores and had one, big meal where they killed an animal and ate it, the big hunt for the week? And do you still think that there's a role for any type of meat protein in the diet, or not really?
I mean,
I mean,
you
certain
know,
people feel that humans grew up as carnivores, and other factions feel that we were actually herbivores, that our teeth in primitive man were shaped more for grinding and chewing plants versus meat eating.
I would say if I'm both intuitive and like instinctive in my behavior, right? And this is not new, and I didn't create this um, little thing that I'm going to share with you. But if you were to take a child and put them, in a pen
Hmm.
with a rabbit, a chicken, a baby piglet, and a bunch of fruits and vegetables, right? And
Hmm.
you came back a few hours later, you would see the kid, the rabbit, and the chicken and the piglet all like petting each other, like being friendly, eating the abundance of the fruits and vegetables.
True.
Right. So the case in which that child would become feral and want to kill the chicken is in scarcity and it's in survival.
Hmm.
So like I do my best not to judge, not to tell people what to do,
Right.
but what if you were to ask me, are there any circumstances in which I believe that one could eat animals or should eat animals? It would be in extreme survival conditions,
Hmm.
like in extreme survival conditions. But other than that, I think that um, it's not necessary, and I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I do intermittent fasting and a few other things in terms of biohacking my health. And as I get older, I'm trying to find more things to do that are, I want to be conscious of. Are there things you do to biohack your health other than eating grains and being so healthy and living under the stars?
Well, I have a very small feeding window. So
Mm,
I feed between like noon and 6 p.m. So I'm
okay.
fasting for about 18 hours a day. So
Okay.
from the time I wake up, I drink a lot of water. Um, and then around noon, I'll eat some fruit,
Mm-hmm.
usually local, what's in season. We now have an organic garden, so I'm able to eat melons out of our garden. I posted in my story yesterday a beautiful organic yellow watermelon with seeds that we grew
Yum.
on our land. And then I start eating sprouts, and I've been 100% plant-based for 21 years. For the last month, I went back to being all raw vegan. So
Mm.
now I'm eating sprouts and fruit, and I'm happy. I'm really happy doing it.
And
So
no part of you misses, like, bread and cheese and Christmas cookies and wine and stuff like that.
I mean, not as much as I miss like crack and heroin and things like that. So those things evoke memories for me.
Yeah.
And like one of the reasons why I went back to eating raw even was because when when you're eating cooked vegetables and you add salt, oil, sugar,
Yeah.
sweeteners to the cooked vegetables, you can overeat them,
Hmm.
and the vegetables get wilted. But when you're eating raw, like you cannot overeat raw sprouts.
You
Like
fill up
you'll
fast, I bet, right?
you'll fill up, and the body will signal that to your brain, like, oh, you've had enough. Like if you're eating something that is just like nutritionally devoid, like a potato chip that's just fried with oil and
Yeah.
salt, right? it's like the dopamine and serotonin are going off in the brain, and you're just
Mm-hmm.
wanting to eat more and more and more. If you're eating sprouts and you're looking at them and then you're chewing them and you're mixing them with your saliva as they go in, you're like, wow, you're being satiated. So there's absolutely, you don't get off,
Mm-hmm.
right, by
Mm-hmm.
overeating sprouts. Like
True.
you eat the sprouts, and when you're done eating, there's no pleasure in it. So
Mm-hmm.
in my recipes in my book, they're designed to evoke some pleasure as the transition, but
Mm-hmm.
now I can get to the point where I can blind taste, a sprout and know exactly what it is and
Mm-hmm.
feel good and feel complete with eating it.
Interesting. How do you look at anti-aging overall? Like, do you think there are benefits for beauty and skin in terms of sprouting?
Oh, 100%. Like if you think about, um, many men and women, suffer from uh, too much sugar and yeast and eczema. Um,
Yeah.
all of that is from processed carbohydrates.
Hmm.
And a lot of like what you see on the skin is from oils and processed oils, finding like if you have and you're the expert on this, but when something is coming out of the skin, your skin is your largest organ, and
Yes.
it's so toxic that it's trying to get out wherever it can. And because there's so much mental activity and blood flowing through the brain, like people don't realize that you can lose weight and you burn a lot of your calories by your brain by thinking. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're flowing all the blood and everything is going through, it's going to manifest. Toxic things are going to find their way out of the body. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that the one of the things I remembered was the diet elimination, allergy elimination diet, and it's also toxic elimination diet. So if you were to swing the pendulum, one of the things I do pretty regularly, probably once a quarter, is I do a water fast, and
Hmm.
that kind of resets my equilibrium, resets, and makes me so grateful, right?
So just
Like
water only for how many days? For 24 hours
usually
or
7 to 10 days.
what? Just only water for a week
Oh, absolutely.
with electrolytes, I hope.
No, no, straight water.
That's
Straight
interesting.
straight
It's
water.
probably not good for our listeners out there to do without medical consultation with their doctors.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean there's a medically supervised water fasting facility in
hmm,
Northern California called True North Health,
hmm,
and they medically supervise. They've got doctors on staff 24/7. You
hmm.
go there, they take all your vitals, and the results are astounding. I think they've got the most proven, published, peer-reviewed papers on the reversal of hypertension with water fasting. And
Wow.
so it's very, very powerful, and water fasting has been around since the beginning of time, and
Hmm.
it's hard for like the first couple of days not eating, but then you develop an entirely new relationship with food.
That's
Like,
kind of true. Even when you intermittent fast, you make a mental decision. Like if food doesn't talk to you like you want to eat it. It's like you're making the decisions, not the food talking to you.
well, most people don't realize that 90% of the DNA in our body, in the microbiome, is non-human DNA. It is
Mm,
microbes, it is bacteria, it is fungi, they are parasites, and there's a whole ecosystem that's living in our gut.
mm-hmm.
And that will controls all sorts of behavior in the brain and why. So what happens is the water fasting does a great job of resetting those because they can't survive if you're not feeding them. And
Mm.
so then you get to rebuild your microbiome in an intelligent way that you want to, with healthy microbes, not the unhealthy ones.
Very interesting. Well, Doug, this has been so fascinating. I think I'm going to go home and buy some sprouts immediately on the way home and start growing them. And I can't wait to try. this process of incorporating more plant-based sprouting in my diet. And I hope all of our listeners also are going to check it out. And I'd love to read your sprout book as well. So where can our listeners find you to get some further information?
So I'm most active on Instagram at Doug Evans, and my book, The Sprout Book, is available wherever books are sold. And those are the simple things. My website, dougevans.com, just points to my Instagram, and they can sign up for our email list for the Sprout Book, where we'll be sending out a lot of new information in the research. But I've been interviewing people and recipes, and I got a recipe from one of the top Michelin star chefs in the world in New York City, Chef Jean George
How
gave me a great
nice.
recipe
Uh-huh.
that was sprout centric. That's in my book. And so I think it's just the beginning, but I'm simple that, and I'm happy to share this information. I'm very active on responding to questions about sprouting for you and your listeners. So just make a comment on the post and I go through my best to answer all questions on there.
I love how passionate you are about this. It's clear that this is your passion project, and it's such a gift to everyone that you bringing this information to the forefront to modern people trying to live their best lives. So thanks again for coming on the podcast. That's it for now, guys. Don't forget to find me on my Instagram doing amazing things with people's faces, keeping things pretty on the inside and outside. It's important to look good and feel good. My Instagram is Beauty by Dr. K, DRKAY, and our website is the same, beautybydrk.com. That's where you can find my amazing skincare, which is very botanical and green tea based. And Doug, I'm going to send you some to try on your handsome face.
Thank you.
That's it for now, guys. Stay beautiful.